Yeah, you took us through the draft, so I want to get your thoughts on the end game and what the Eagles were able to do. And we'll start with the top pick overall, and that's Jiad Campbell. You know, it's funny to me, Devin. The first thing Howie said, basically after the pick, was he didn't want to put this player in a box, and everybody's tried to do after that is try to put this player in a box. What was your evaluation of Jiad Campbell? Because Howie did play up his pass rushing ability a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, I could see why he would play up his pass rush ability, considering that's where he played in high school and early in his career in Alabama. But yeah, I really like the player in Jiad Campbell. I was surprised that he was there at 31, just because you felt like a guy coming out of the NFL Combine, the way that he tested, the way that he moved as an athlete, and you combine that with this tape, it seemed like he was going to be a top 15, top 20 pick. And everything that I heard out of the combine is that the Tampa Bay Bucks were, prepared to draft him at 19 overall. But obviously, the shoulder surgery, caused him to go down the board a little bit, and maybe some of the other health things he has going on related. But yeah, I love the player. I love the pick. I think he's a player that is. I think in how he said as much that he's going to start in an inside linebacker room, but I think there's some flexibility there if you want to use them in kind of some of the blitz packages. Maybe have him standing up off the edge and rushing off the edge. I think as a pass rusher, I mean he's more of a speed guy right now. I don't think he's quite refined really in that role. He hasn't played it full time and played significant snaps there since high school. So it'll take a little bit of more development, I think, if you really want to use him off the edge. Even as soon as next year. But I think overall the player is really good. The value that you got in him also in the first round was really good, and hometown kid guy coming back home. So I think we have all those things combined. That it's a really good first round pick and a player that I'm excited to see how the Eagles use in Vic Fangio's defense.
Devin, I want to ask you. Let's just assume for a second that Jiad Campbell is healthy for this exercise. All right, the Eagles run a lot of nickel. Who comes off the field for Jiad Campbell to get on? Is it Nakobe Dean? Let's assume they're all healthy. Is it Nakobe Dean? Do you see him lining up where one of the guys on the front would be? Maybe a Jalix Hunt. Where do you see him lining up in that nickel defense when you have 5 defensive backs in the field?
I think in nickel he's probably a linebacker. I could see him coming in for Nakobe Dean. I just think he's right now a better player in coverage than Nakobe Dean. Not to say that Nakobe Dean isn't a good player, and he can again get into those coverage drops, but we saw how well Zach Baun played last year, and he's a non-negotiable to he's staying on the field for sure.
Right.
And I also think it might have. I think the secondary is going to be a little interesting depending on who wins the CB2 spot, opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, because Cooper DeJean was so good at nickel. So I would surmise it'll be Nakobe Dean or maybe one of the guys. Maybe Cooper DeJean is still in the nickel. Maybe they bump out outside corner, but I think in the boxes is most likely where Jiad Campbell will be in nickel, just because I think that's where he's most comfortable at right now, and maybe they'll get a little creative, assuming that he's healthy, and maybe in camp he shows some more pass rushing chops. But right now I would say probably coming in for Nakobe Dean in those packages.
If it's Zach Baun and Jiad Campbell, and whether that's 2025 or 2026, because he might not have an off season, and it might take a while to ramp up for Jiad. But whenever it gets to that, who's the Mike linebacker?
I think Zach Baun's the Mike linebacker in that scenario.
Yeah, that would be my estimation as well.
So it doesn't seem like it's good for Nakobe Dean. I know we mentioned like he wasn't drafted to replace Nakobe, but in order to get him on the field, it feels like Nakobe's got to come off.
Well, if he's playing linebacker, yeah. Now, what's
Yeah.
interesting to me, and I've looked at it, and I want to throw the Van Ginkel reference at you because people have looked at the way Vic used Andrew Van Ginkel, Devin in Miami. It was more, he plays stack linebacker, but he plays off the edge. He played as a flat defender, played as a joker inside rusher. Long term. Now, we know you got to build up to that. There are very few people in the NFL that can play that many roles. There aren't a lot of players that do that. Does he have that versatility to where, let's say, on 1st and 10, he's playing weak side linebacker? If it's 3rd and long, he might be a joker as an inside rusher, might be an edge rusher, but he'll be on the field for 3 downs like Van Ginkel. Does he have that kind of versatility long term?
I think so. I think when you looked at the Alabama tape, a lot of those kind of characteristics kind of showed up where, on 1st and 2nd down, he'd be inside the box, but he'd be on the line of scrimmage on 3rd down, in the interior over the center, off of the tackle, on the tackle's outside shoulder, and rushing the passer on 3rd downs, So at Alabama, you can kind of see some of that usage and some of the vision that, yeah, we know he's a really good linebacker. He can fly, sideline to sideline. He can drop into coverage and play some man coverage in some spots against tight ends. But he also can get after the passer and rush as a passer. I don't think he was quite as effective just because I think he was more so trying to occupy a player and occupy a blocker versus like actually letting loose and trying to rush the passer. And on some of those situations, just because depending on the blitz package, depending on the game that you're running up front, sometimes you're just picking a player so someone else can get free. But in those instances that he did actually rush the passer, you could see the speed off the edge, his ability to turn the corner, and I think it'll be in the Eagles' best interest not to just use him as an inside linebacker, but getting some value and blitzing him on 3rd downs as well to kind of mix it up. But if you need him to drop in the coverage, he can do so. So I think he's a player that you just come in with a defined plan and you want to be able to give different looks to offenses. So it's harder to game plan against him. And you have Zach Baun, potentially next to him to be more that steady presence in the middle of the field. I think that opens up the versatility aspect of Campbell's game.
Going to be interesting to see. Devin, talk to me about the 2nd round pick, Andrew Mukuba, a safety out of Texas. Obviously, we had a great season at Texas last year in the SEC. They picked him at 64. There was a couple other safeties still on the board, notably Kevin Winston from Penn State and that Notre Dame safety, Xavier Watts. But what did you think of that pick, and what do you think of that player here for the Eagles?
Yeah, Andrew Mukuba was one of my favorite players in the draft process, and a player that actually mocked to the Eagles in my last mock draft, just because I felt like he made a lot of sense to what the Eagles are looking for at safety. Mukuba is a guy that played mostly nickel at Clemson before he transferred to Texas in his final season in college, and you could see kind of that experience showing up, especially defending the run and coming up and flying downhill to make tackles in the run game, but also in the coverage ability too. He's a guy that can come down across the line of scrimmage and come down within that 10 to 15 area and make plays on the football. I think he had 5 interceptions last year, and a playmaker in that secondary, and a guy that, despite, being sub 200 pounds, he's incredibly physical, can come downhill, can make tackles in space, and can cover the deep thirds of the field, deep halves. So I like the player, and even relative to where he was taken and some of the other players on the board. I think Mukuba was a better athlete than Xavier Watts, and obviously had more playing experience than Kevin Winston Jr. So I think he's more of a sure bet than maybe some of those other players that he was taken ahead of. And obviously, I know the weight is going to be a big concern, just kind of the style of play that he plays with. But he's a reliable player. I don't think he missed many games, if any at all, in college with injuries, and a player that, despite his size, can make all the plays on the back end and kind of shore up that defense, as a run defender and pass coverage.
Day 3, Devin, I thought it was very exciting. The Eagles had a lot of volume, a lot of picks, ended up taking 8 different players. You probably saw their little unscripted show where they showed the war room, a little bit of their what they call their passion meeting, where different scouting execs, talk up players and who they really want to pound the table for. It's a lot of guys they were looking at. Start off day 3 with your highest ceiling player and also the one with the highest floor, the one who's just solid.
I would say highest ceiling. I have to go to Cameron Williams, the tackle from Texas, just because he was a guy that, I mean, even outside of me, I had him inside my top 100, but a lot of people did. A lot of people thought that he would go in that third, fourth round area, and to get him in round 6, and to get him after the Eagles already took another offensive tackle, I thought was tremendous value, and a player that is only 21 years old, only had 16 starts in his college career, and really truly a ball of clay that can be molded into a really good player. You see the tools he has, the size, the arm length, and even some of the surprising mobility at his size too. Just a guy that really is truly inexperienced, but I think also a guy that you're not going to really be counting on for at least a few seasons, and you can take some time to develop under Jeff Stoutland. And anytime that the Eagles take an offensive lineman, especially that late in the draft, and a guy that was at least highly thought of, in the draft community, I think that speaks volumes, and you just know that Stoutland is going to get the best out of him. So I would go highest ceiling for him in that particular pick. Highest floor, I'm gonna go Kyle McCord, because I think he is a guy that is kind of what you want as a potential backup, a guy that's not scared of the moment, not scared to throw the football around, and make plays with his arm downfield, and just kind of have that fearless mindset. He played really fearless his final year at Syracuse, a hometown guy as well, a player that I think at some point in his career I could see him starting games. I don't think necessarily for the Eagles, but I think he can develop into a nice backup. And I'm assuming that Tanner McKee is either going to get traded or signed somewhere else, potentially to compete for a starting spot, just because I think that's kind of the trajectory he's on, over the next few years. So I think McCord was taken to kind of be the potential long-term backup, and I really like the player. I think what you're getting is a guy that can come in, and you're going to have a drop off no matter if you lose a starting quarterback, or even in this case a second string. But him coming in, I feel okay with him running the offense, knowing that he has confidence in himself, and a player that doesn't have all the physical maybe tools that some of the early round quarterbacks typically do, but the confidence and moxie he plays with, I think, I could see him, being a long-term backup in Philly.
Good stuff there. I want to ask you about a fan favorite, Devin, is Tai Robinson. Everybody seems to love this guy. I loved this guy when they picked him. What do you think of the pick? What do you think of the player? I happen to think he's my guy who I have the highest floor at. I think he's going to be a contributor year 1. Maybe that's lofty. I know he's a 4th-round draft pick. What do you see in Tai Robinson for the Eagles?
Yeah, he's a guy that's high effort player, just continuously working to get involved in the play, in an explosive player. I mean, you saw his testing at the NFL Combine, one of the best testers relative to his size. He's just so powerful. He has powerful hands, plays with kind of a reckless abandon, very physical at the point of attack, and then finishing on plays and sacking the quarterback, and really had a big jump this year in his production and productive player, and beat some really good offensive linemen over the course of the season. He had a solid game against Ohio State, and some of the interior presence that they have, like Donovan Jackson, who was taken in the first round by the Vikings, and a player that I think it continued to get better over the course of his college career and found some nice consistency in his final season at Nebraska. I do think that he was played because he was played a little bit all over the defensive line. I think he might have been miscast at times, especially when he played like nose and one technique, really deep on the inside. But I think he's a guy that's probably going to play more three technique at the NFL level, and I do think he can be a contributor as well for the Eagles defense, and give him some more pass rushing juice in that defensive line room.
One guy, I think if you look at all these guys, and you just talked about Tai a little bit, we'll talk about Smile Munden a little bit, Drew Kendall, Myles Hinton, their fathers, Antoine Powell Ryland, his production at the college level. The one guy I can't get a beat on from my perspective is Mac McWilliams. So I want to hear your thoughts on him and where he might project. Because if you look at the Eagles last year, yeah, Quinyon was great. Cooper was great. Slay was great. But they also, at times, Slay particularly, but also Quinyon late got a little bit banged up, and other guys had to play. Isaiah Rodgers had to play. Avonte Maddox had to play at times. They had to use a lot of defensive backs. They have to repopulate. They lost 4 of them. If you add CJ into the mix with Slay, Rodgers, Maddox, they got to repopulate that secondary, Devin. So Mac McWilliams is a guy who might have to play at some point. How did you grade him? How did you look at him as a prospect?
Yeah, he's a guy that, has nickel and outside corner experience and a player that, is extremely adept at getting his hands on the football. He didn't really have any interception totals this past year at UCF, but a player that I thought was at his best in zone coverage, and playing kind of the off zone man or the off zone coverage as well, making plays on the football in front of him and disrupting at the catch point. I think he's probably more of a nickel because of his size. I think he's only like 5'10" at the NFL level, and I thought there were some snaps that he could do a little bit of both. I thought he was a really good and sound tackler in the open field. They would try to throw screens at him. He would blow up those screens, and I think it's going to suit him well as a potential versatile player in the secondary, in the depth piece at least. He could play on the outside if you need him to in a pinch, but I think he's probably could be the backup nickel. And maybe you cross-train him at safety as well and kind of have a built-in Avonte Maddox replacement. That's how I kind of view him as a guy that can bring that depth, can play a few different, secondary roles and for the Eagles secondary. And, I think he's probably going to be a special teams contributor, at least in year one, and maybe he can continue to build off of that. But I think he's probably going to be a backup nickel. Would be my guess what he does in the fall.
Gonna be interesting to see on him. Devin, one of my favorite picks in the draft, and maybe I'm falling for it, I don't know, you tell me, is their final pick, Antoine Powell Ryland. I mean, anytime someone puts up 25.5 sacks, I can't just glaze over that. Now, I know he's got some questions about the measurables, some of those things. I thought a great dart throw in round 6 there with that draft pick. What do you think of Antoine Powell Ryland out of Virginia Tech?
Yeah, it was a guy that I think was only there because of, his I think 34.25-inch arms,
Yeah,
and I get it. Yeah, I get that. But, he was an incredibly productive player. I think when I was, watching him in the fall that I heard he had 3 games of 4 or more sacks in his career, which is kind of insane to think about, considering, him getting a bead on snap counts and turning the corner and using that speed that he has to turn the corner.
The buzz around the Philadelphia Eagles NovaCare complex was undeniable this past weekend as the team welcomed its 2025 NFL draft class to rookie minicamp. With fresh faces donning midnight green and coaches pacing the sidelines, it was the perfect kickoff to what could be another defining season for the reigning Super Bowl champions. And while all eyes were on the future of the franchise, one name stole the show, even without taking a full snap: Jiad Campbell. Campbell, the Eagles' first-round pick out of Alabama, arrived with sky-high expectations and a shoulder still recovering from post-combine surgery. Though he wasn't a full participant in drills, his presence loomed large. According to NBC Sports' Dave Zangaro, Campbell joined team stretches and observed the day's practice while working off to the side with the off-ball linebackers. The Eagles appear to be easing him back slowly, but the plan is clear. They see him as a defensive cornerstone. Despite some early speculation that Campbell might fill an edge role, perhaps even slotting in for Josh Sweat, his placement with the off-ball linebackers hints at a different trajectory. During positional drills, he was seen taking shadow reps a few yards behind active participants, a telling sign of where the Eagles want his journey to begin. It's a smart move. Campbell is a Swiss Army knife on defense, and Vic Fangio's scheme thrives on versatility. Campbell's resume is already impressive. His 2024 campaign at Alabama was nothing short of dominant. He racked up 117 total tackles, 11.5 of them for loss, with 5 sacks, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, 2 recoveries, and a pair of pass breakups. Whether chasing down runners, covering tight ends, or exploding into the backfield, Campbell showcased every trait an NFL coach dreams of. It's that all-around skill set that convinced the Eagles to trade up for him in the first round. Now donning jersey number 30, a nod to his early days with the Crimson Tide, Campbell joins a defense in transition. With Nakobe Dean rehabbing from a torn patellar tendon and Zach Baun returning but still unproven in a full-time role, Campbell has a direct path to meaningful early snaps. Vegas odds makers are already paying attention, giving him plus 1,500 odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's early, but the foundation is there. He's not the only rookie generating buzz. The Eagles' entire draft haul is loaded with intriguing prospects, several of whom are poised to contribute from day one. Second-round safety Andrew Mukuba could be next in line for a starting job. With C.J. Gardner-Johnson now elsewhere and Sidney Brown returning from ACL surgery, Mukuba has a golden opportunity. He brings the same aggressive energy and ball-hawking instincts that made Gardner-Johnson a fan favorite. The Eagles believe he's ready, and his college tape, along with his tenacious style, backs it up. Tai Robinson, a powerful interior lineman drafted in the 4th round, adds immediate depth to the defensive front. At 24, his maturity and physicality will be tested behind stars Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. With Milton Williams off to Arizona, Robinson should see rotational snaps if he impresses during training camp. In the secondary, 5th-round pick Mac McWilliams offers flexibility and speed. With key veterans like Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers no longer on the roster, the door is open. McWilliams played corner, nickel, and special teams at Florida State, and he'll push to earn snaps behind new starters Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Fellow 5th-rounder Smell Mondon Jr. might not crack the linebacker rotation immediately, but his special teams experience at Georgia ensures he'll be active on game days. The Eagles value versatility and athleticism, and Mondon offers both in spades. The offensive side of the draft wasn't neglected either. Center Drew Kendall enters a crowded interior line room, but with the right development and the ability to play guard, he could stick as a long-term project. Quarterback Kyle McCord, a 6th-rounder from Syracuse, is likely fighting for a QB3 spot, but comes with a big arm and Philly ties, 2 traits that could earn him favor with both the coaching staff and fans. Myles Hinton is a more NFL-ready tackle who could compete for the swing role immediately, while Cameron Williams has promising physical traits that could be developed under top-tier coaching. Edge rusher Antwan Powell-Ryland faces tough competition but could contribute situationally and on special teams. Overall, with Campbell and Mukuba at the forefront, the Eagles' rookie class shows strong potential and could become one of the team's most impactful in years if development goes well. For fans, there's plenty to be excited about. The rookies are in the building, the pads will be popping soon, and the road to another title run has officially begun. A move that has taken Philadelphia Eagles fans by surprise, Britton Covey, the NFL's punt return yardage leader in the 2023 season, has officially parted ways with the team and signed a one-year deal with the Los Angeles Rams. The announcement dropped like a thunderclap across the Eagles fandom, who had embraced Covey as one of the most electric and reliable pieces of the team's special teams unit. Just months after the Eagles hoisted the Lombardi Trophy in a thrilling Super Bowl victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, one of their most dynamic returners is heading west. Covey's departure feels sudden not only because of his on-field performance, but also because of the narrative fans had built around him. A gritty, undersized specialist who defied the odds. At just 5 feet 8 inches and 170 pounds, Covey wasn't the prototypical NFL player. He didn't have the intimidating frame or blazing 40-yard dash time that makes scouts drool. But what he did have? Vision, instincts, fearlessness, and an uncanny ability to change direction on a dime made him one of the most exciting return men in recent memory. In 2023, Covey led the league with 417 punt return yards, often setting up the Eagles' offense in advantageous field position. He had become a dependable, game-shifting presence on special teams, fielding punts under pressure and turning what could be a routine play into a highlight reel. For fans who watched his every touch with anticipation, it's hard to overstate just how important he was in flipping the field and injecting energy into tight games. But the fairy tale took a dark turn in December when Covey suffered a neck injury that sidelined him for the remainder of the season, including the playoffs and the Eagles' unforgettable Super Bowl run. It was a devastating blow, not only for him personally, but for a fan base that had seen him evolve from a practice squad hopeful into a star. His absence was felt in the postseason, even if the Eagles ultimately triumphed without him. While Covey stayed engaged with the team and supported his teammates from the sidelines, speculation about his long-term health began to swirl. Neck injuries in the NFL are never taken lightly, and the Eagles' front office was reportedly cautious about offering an extension or a restructured deal, given the uncertainty surrounding his recovery. Despite initial optimism, the team decided not to retain him for the 2025 season, making room on the roster for new talent. In response to Covey's exit, the Eagles quickly signed rookie Giles Jackson, a promising return specialist and wide receiver out of the University of Washington. Known for his explosive speed and elusiveness, Jackson brings a different style to the return game, more raw athleticism, less refinement. While fans are hopeful Jackson can grow into a pivotal role, there's no denying that Covey's shoes will be difficult to fill. The Rams, meanwhile, wasted no time scooping up the newly available Covey. LA has been rebuilding its special teams unit after an inconsistent 2023 season, and the addition of a proven veteran like Covey is a clear signal that they're aiming to tighten up that phase of the game. Rams head coach Sean McVay praised Covey's tenacity and football IQ, saying in a statement, "We've been watching Britton for a while now. His ability to read the field and make plays is elite. We're excited to bring him into our system." Covey himself released a heartfelt message to Eagles fans, thanking the organization, his teammates, and the city of Philadelphia for embracing him. "Philly gave me my shot," he wrote. "I'll never forget the roar of Lincoln Financial Field when I'd break through that first wave of tacklers. I'm proud to have worn that jersey and to have been part of a Super Bowl team. Thank you for believing in me." For fans, his message hit home. In an era where the NFL is often dominated by superstars and mega contracts, Covey was a reminder that football is still a game of heart, grit, and moments of magic. He was the underdog who made good, and Philly, a city that thrives on underdog stories, loved him for it. As the Eagles prepare for a new season and adjust to life without one of their most electrifying returners, the fan base will no doubt be watching Covey closely in Los Angeles. And when the Rams come to town, if the schedule grants that drama, the cheers may well be mixed with a standing ovation from fans who remember every cut, every spin, every improbable return. Britton Covey may no longer wear midnight green, but his legacy in Philadelphia is secure. He was a spark, a playmaker, and a key piece in a championship puzzle. His next chapter begins in LA, and if history is any indication, he's far from done dazzling football fans across the country.